Great, so this is bootleg Mothlight 2. And before I really get all this going, if anyone is so willing or so able to live stream this performance to your favorite social media platform, we can take a couple of minutes to get that going. Like Dateline, I'm sure would love to. I've provided instructions for you here. If this is all too much, which seems like maybe it is, then don't worry about it. To me, it's really interesting, though, that these two instructions for the same basic process are so different, even though this is like the same megacorp that's running both of these platforms. Okay, let's do it. My name is Noah Travis Phillips, and this is bootleg Mothlight 2. This is a meta media or performance lecture, a lecture performance. Prologue. The moth and dust in the wind to begin. Start. This is the creation of a chrysalis and of a hard drive, and a brief prologue. Bootleg Mothlight 2, as the name suggests, is a sequel to a Video Duet Plus webpage, which you can visit a remediated version of at that link there. This is one take of that video duet, Bootleg Mothlight. It was made for a specific installation of a pair of specialty screens, product name Electric Objects. Electric objects are, or were, picture frame-like computers that can display high-resolution digital artwork from the internet. They are now extinct media, I guess. The company doesn't exist anymore. They sold it all to Giphy. These two electric objects are displayed side by side, so they're like twins, they're a pair, they're a couple, they're in dialogue. This is the piece kind of as it was displayed in C2. The formalism of these compositions is important. Where something is located, kind of voices within voices, and the sense that the vanishing point, which is located between the two strings, is void. It's a zero. That stereoscopic vision isn't exactly aligned. This is the format and the layout of the screens as compared with stage directions. This is each screen treated individually in the same way. So there's the structuring element that has quite a bit of freedom, or the composition isn't completely answerable to, but deeply informed by. Each component becomes a character, kind of a theatrical play. And the audience, of course, is outside of the screen space. These are stills from that pair, frozen. And they were offset, they didn't have the same length, so they were always having different combinations. We're getting a sense of some of the themes and central concepts of this video duet and this performance lecture. It's the left side format. On the top, we're racing down a freeway, a tunnel. On the bottom, in the background, there's a glacier calving, a huge chunk breaking off. In the front of that is a still from Stan Brackage's classic experimental film Mothlight. In front of that is a 3D model of a moth flying toward a light. Here's the right side format. The background is two different scenes from a Datamosh remix of Brackage's Mothlight. On the top is a 3D model of an hourglass, half empty, half full. Bottom right is our friend the moth flying off stage left. This is chapter 1. So this is Stan Brackage's Mothlight, although it's admittedly a very low-resolution copy, downloaded, pirated from the internet. This file is the kind of the locus of this project, bootleg Mothlight 2. Stan Brackage's Mothlight was a product of intense angst that he was feeling at the time, 1963, as his consuming passion for making films that were utterly non-commercial, obscure, and perplexing to most viewers was costing him dearly in his personal life. One night, as he was watching moths and other insects swoop to their doom in this irresistible flame, he drew the mental connection between their self-destructive but uncontrollable instincts and his own drive to express himself in ways that didn't help provide for his family's needs and often invited scorn or ejection from his community. This is originally what drew me to working with Mothlight as a kind of a foil. It was a deep compassion for Stan Brakhage and a love for this piece. Also an interest in resolution or resolutions. Resolutions in terms of quality and in terms of commitment. There are also parallels in this drive for art, this passion, and what humans are currently doing on and in the planet, doing something at any cost. Though one of these drives is realized despite money, and the other is being realized because of money. It's also a Dymaxion map, developed by Buckminster Fuller. This map confuses a sense of the poles, magnetic or geographic. It also really distributes a sense of hierarchy. In some way, you can also read the world as a text from left to right, from right to left. This globe would look upside down to Westerners in the 1900s, even the late 1900s, even now, but right side up to Arabs and Persians in the 1100s. And Antarctica is at the top, one of the places where our story may be taking place, both at the top and absent in this picture. The colors of this make it look like the entire planet is covered with ice. This upside downness and reverse polarity will become important soon. Don't fret. There are no borders here either. We are on the planet, like marbles on a tabletop. This is an early 3D generative space piece I made. It's called Humanity 100 Marbles. It's kind of like a game with no end, no point. There's no winning or losing. But we are also in the planet. And I don't mean in terms of mining or anything. There's the electromagnetic field, the thing that makes the atmosphere possible. The magnetosphere here looks like some kind of moth or insect. It's kind of arachnid. And there's the atmosphere itself, the thing that makes breathing possible. Fundamental to our survival, breathing, in and out, one of these really binary things. We are embedded in this very thin layer of the earth. It's like paper thin. Data is embedded in a very thin layer of a hard drive. Data and information, these things that we can't seem to get enough of, nor can we get it fast enough. This is a read-write head, a magnetic polarity determining whether a tiny segment of your hard drive is positive or negative, 1 or 0. There's some kind of similarity in the scale, right? The magnetic coating of the hard drive and the atmosphere of the Earth. There's the moth again, blending in with the human hair that found its way onto this hard drive, along with a dust particle and a fingerprint. Close-up of a read-write head from a hard drive. So a magnetic film on the platter surface memorizes all the information. The read-write head magnetizes microscopic sections of this film and stores the information as bits, 1s or 0s. The value is determined by the orientation of its magnetic field. One high-quality photo is easily 34 million bits, a pattern of plus and minus, or 0 and 1. And here is a detail of a hard drive, framed by a detail of a moth wing, something in the texture, the grit, the pattern, even. Moth wing on the left, hard drive on the right, a parable in form, it's kind of repeated pattern. The scales are dust of the moth wing, the bits and bytes of information and memory and data. Details of the structure of a moth wing, and details of a hard drive. Of memory, the arrangement. The data is actually arrangements of different magnetic polarities. Just I'll keep reiterating these points. Positive or negative, basically sequences of positive and negative. The way we are storing data, information, on all of these hard drives is a lot like the accumulation of glaciers. All of these bits, like so much snow. There seems to be some kind of exchange occurring, bits of snow in a glacier for bits of data. Glaciers hold layers of sediment. They hold bits of plant and animal matter. It's like a kind of archive. And this is to say nothing of the Amazon's archiving project called Glacier. It's almost an oxymoron, right? Amazon and Glacier. There's also this thing called Helmut-Greibel phenomenon, or glacier effect, in which the brain preserves memories of the past the same way a glacier preserves bits of matter. As in your brain preserves your memory of a past acquaintance, the same way a glacier preserves dead remains, as it last saw that acquaintance. Here we have the melting or disintegrating glacier, and we have a data-moshed remix of Mothlight, in which the flow of video data is stacked on top of itself, kind of stratification. One of the tricky things about the original Mothlight is that the legend is, or the understanding is that it's simply moth wings and leaves, etc., stuck onto film and run through the projector, kind of quick and dirty. But Mothlight was optically printed. It was always already remediated. So this piece is also pointing toward that, further or deeper remediation and other forms of materiality between the film and the digital, between the moth wing and the hard drive, and so on and on. Glaciers hold a lot of information about historical climate change, climate record, species adaptation and evolution, preserved in ice. And this is being lost with climate change causing the disappearance of its own evidence. We return to the binary. These are peppered moths. The peppered moth is an evolutionary instance of directional color change as a consequence of air pollution. This became very overt during the Industrial Revolution. The frequency of dark-colored moths increased at that time, an example of industrial melanism. The dark-colored form of the peppered moth, it's called variety carbonaria, was not known prior to 1811. Whereas a light-colored body was an effective camouflage in a clean environment, the dark color was beneficial in a polluted environment. During the early decades of the Industrial Revolution in England, the countryside of London became blanketed with soot from the new coal-burning factories. Many of the light-bodied lichen died from sulfur dioxide emissions, and the trees became darkened. This led to an increase in bird predation for light-colored moths, as they no longer blended in as well in their polluted ecosystem. Indeed, their bodies now dramatically contrasted with the color of the bark. Dark moths, on the other hand, were camouflaged very well by the blackened trees. The dark coloration absorbs the limited sunlight better, even through industrial smoke and smog. Now, currently, presently, the moth coloration fluctuates temporally and regionally. It's pendular, between dark and light, between a positive and negative, and between 1 and 0. Countless bits, meaningful but cryptic arrays of binary patterns. Following through this connection I've been making between the moth, glacier, data, and my or our passions and desires, there's the phenomenon of geomagnetic reversal, in which the magnetic north and south are positive and negative, plus minus of the entire globe interchange. Just like the bits on a hard drive. 1 or 0, positive or negative. In these diagrams, intervals with positive magnetic polarity are black. White intervals are negative magnetic anomalies. The actual molecules and rock samples are oriented to the north or south pole, dependent on planetary polarity. 1 or 0, positive or negative, on a geologic scale though, over the course of eras, periods, epochs, traceable as a planetary phenomenon. Is it possible that a kind of data encoding is present in the geomagnetic reversals of the Earth, a read-write function on a planetary scale and thus cosmic scale, as though the Earth itself is some kind of hard drive? This is chapter 0. The moth, flying above a glacier to the melting glacier. The moth here is a kind of kaiju, which I'll explain in a minute. Like Mothra, Mothra's a kaiju, who humanity actually implores to help them defeat Godzilla. Godzilla, the atomic vengeance dinosaur. 1 in 5 species on Earth now faces extinction, and that will rise to 50% by the end of the century. Earth has lost half of its wildlife in the last 40 years by numbers, species calving from the hole. Is there a sense, a form, a kind of rage in the calving glacier related to the spirit of the kaiju? Mothra's children, though Mothra is killed by Godzilla, Mothra's children do defeat Godzilla by wrapping her, Godzilla, in a cocoon. Most of the kaiju are female, including Godzilla and Mothra. Kaiju is Japanese for strange beast. They can be protagonists, antagonists, or forces of nature. In Godzilla vs. Mothra in 1992, Mothra is portrayed as a guardian of the Earth who presided over an advanced civilization over 12,000 years ago. When the civilization created a device designed to control the Earth's climate, the Earth itself, embittered over humanity's interference in its natural order, responded by creating the Black Batra, which Mothra defeated, but not before that civilization was wiped out. You have no motivation, I'm sure, to destroy the Earth when you start the engine of your car, and that single engine ignition is statistically irrelevant. But when you scale it up to mean trillions of car ignitions and billions of cars across the Earth, that's exactly what's happening. And really, though, the car ignition is just a symbol for techno-military industrial ultra-capitalism. The Earth is being destroyed, irrevocably changed. It's kind of like being in a movie, you know? It's like, I'm an android, I thought I had free will, but on this other level, I'm just blindly executing my part of this algorithm, playing a character on the stage. So that's uncanny. And so is ecological awareness. That's a hyperobject. It's this really high-dimensional thing. You are it, but you aren't. Like, you're one element that makes it this much greater thing. You're necessarily in relationship, interconnected. You're within. This drive, as the ignition of the car, we are as the moth in our drive for information, for data, for prosthetic memory and ability. Kind of like this Lorentz attractor. It's a trajectory that we're on. A journey without trajectory is fundamentally uncontrollable. The concept of trajectory has replaced like a notion of geography. This creates some kind of butterfly effect, or in this case, you could call the moth effect. We are creatures in time, racing forward, hungry for more data, more information, more storage, a place for our history with no time to reflect. And why do moths and other insects fly toward the light at all? It's a creature of the night with a longing for light, this really irresistible attraction, desire, seduction. Even some of Norbert Wiener's earliest experiments in cybernetics involved a robotic moth that turned and moved toward light. Why does the moth fly toward the light, toward the flame, refusing to heed risks? And this is what we're doing. This kind of bold action is also necessary in overcoming these safe self-same problems. The sort of standard line of explanations that moths and other nocturnal insects use celestial navigation for orienting in the dark, the same way that explorers could find their way by charting a course relative to some celestial far distant point of light. And what has happened since that time is that humans have come along and developed terrestrial point sources of light, very intense light that is not millions of miles away. Flying upward toward the moon, toward the open sky is a perfect strategy for avoiding predators. Another theory suggests that the moths fly toward the light is caused by a visual distortion common to all sighted creatures. It's called a mock band. The band is the region surrounding a bright light that is perceived as being darker than any other part of the sky. They want the cover of darkness for safety and wind up circling the light until their flight path takes them away from it or causes them to crash into it. Another explanation, proposed by USDA entomologists in the 1970s, is that the infrared light spectrum emitted by candles contains some of the exact same wavelengths of light given off by female moths' luminescent pheromones. In other words, It's just male moths that are attracted to flames because they wrongly assume they're going to get lucky. This doesn't explain their attraction to UV light, which doesn't emit the same wavelengths as moth pheromones, but it does say something very profound about the lure of love. Writing data and reading data. Next one, look at the sun. Staring into the light. That's 100 pictures of suns I took like 7 years ago. Until the eyes water. And we cry. This sense of the unstoppable, or the unstopping, the unrelenting tragedy, we can see it on the horizon, right ahead of us. Crime, like the increased rainfall in some areas, the seemingly more regular and more extreme flooding, there really is a sense of tragedy. We are mourning the death of species. We're mourning an over death of the environment, which I will say also has an introverted element, our own complicity. We keep enacting the algorithm. The glaciers melting are like tears. These tears, the sense of tragedy, that we are responsible for this ecological and environmental devastation, and that we have no other choice, is a massive question mark there. Mud puddling, or simply puddling, is when a moth seeks out certain moist substances, such as rotting plant matter, mud, carrion, even feces, and they suck up the fluid. From the fluids, they obtain nutrients, such as salts and amino acids, that play various roles in their physiology and ecology. Males seem to benefit from the sodium uptake through mud puddling behavior with an increase in reproductive success. The collected sodium and amino acids are transferred to the female with the spermatophore during mating as a kind of nuptial gift. This nutrition also enhances the survival rate of the eggs. So again, seduction and desire. We're ruining the planet, and it's sad, but moths drink tears. After all, tradition is not the worship of ashes. It is the handing on of fire. The moth is flying toward the flame into the future, as are we. Chasing and racing toward wayward vectors of illumination into the future, into some idea, the idea that something else can happen. Thank you. Let's get down. Let's go.